Hello everyone, I am Bride Minion Michelle, and today for this Classic Movie Monday, I thought it would be interesting to briefly address a set of films as opposed to just one film in particular, and those are the Universal Monster movies. Ah yes, the Universal Monster movies. These films started off in the silent era of filmmaking, the first ever being The Hunchback of Notre Dame, followed by such works as Phantom of the Opera, Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, The Invisible Man, The Wolf Man. All of those came from Universal. And Universal sort of started this trend of horror films because these were really the first ever horror-related films. These were the first to be presented to an audience on the big screen. And these films in particular really revolutionized the sort of art of filmmaking and how it can be based within telling stories that aren't, again, as realistic as others. And again, this is where we get the importance of makeup and things of that nature that allowed for a monster to be showcased on a theater as opposed to just through literature. And these were really important films because they drew a lot of influence from those original tales that were within literature. And this is where we get a lot of films that have resulted from these initial films sort of coming out and sort of breaking the mold when it comes to establishing this recognition of displaying the genre of horror onto theaters. So this sort of universal idea was started out by the silent era, like I said before, which was mainly The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Phantom of the Opera being the more famous ones. And the star of these films was Lon Chaney, who was a very famous actor during the time. And he sort of broke the mold because he was really the only silent, our main silent actor that was a part of these films. And his most famous, though, being The Hunchback of Notre Dame and The Phantom of the Opera, respectively coming out in 1923. The first ever was The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and then The Phantom of the Opera in 1925. So Lon Chaney was the actor who started this concept of sort of displaying monsters on a screen. And again, we see this with how the special effects are handled as well as with the acting. And I think a lot of these films are noted for their talented actors. And Lon Chaney was really the first actor to break the mold and sort of get these monster movies out there. And this was later followed by Bela Lugosi, who was the actor who played Dracula. And then it was followed by actors such as Boris Karloff, who did Frankenstein. And then after that, Lon Chaney Jr., who was the son of Lon Chaney, sort of did the kind of spin-offs that were sort of associated with monsters in particular, like Frankenstein and whatnot. And this is where sort of the Universal monster films sort of started going into the sort of B movie territory, and it sort of started with Lon Chaney. So really, the most well-noted films, I think, were the ones that really came out earlier rather than later. But these were really the main actors that were at the forefront of these films. And The thing is too is that they tell the stories of these monsters fairly effectively, not just through the acting, but through the sets and the creativity. There's a lot that these films, I think, have to offer. And like was mentioned by the regular Michelle when it comes to the James Bond franchise, yes, there's a little bit of duds here and there through out this this series of films of Universal monsters, and I'm not saying that all of them hold up as well as maybe we would like to think, but I think a lot of them have really broken ground when it comes to capturing the imagination for its audience, because imagine being in the 1920s and 30s when these films were coming out, and how revolutionary it was to see these people perform on a screen. And that's really when it started, because it was 1923 when The Hunchback came out, and then it sort of progressed from there. And I think we didn't get to the B movie territory until the 40s, and then the 50s. So we did have this sort of 20-year period of where the monster movies were considered to be worthy of praise and recognition. And I'm not saying that some of the later ones probably are, some of the later ones, can't hold out. I'm sure that there's some good ones out there, but the more famous ones, I think, came out between the 1920s and 40s period. And it's sort of, again, it's all about bringing in that movie magic, and I think that movie magic is largely due to these Universal monsters. They really put a stamp as to what Hollywood could do, as to what sets Hollywood could use. It was really groundbreaking when it came to film, because it started out right around when film was really taking hold, and with all of these elements within these films, I think it's safe to say that they deserve to be in this kind of classic category because they hold up. Um, the acting, I think, holds up really well, and the effects for the time, I think, hold up really well. And it's nice to see that they used, like the props and things like that. And it's sort of like watching a play at times, when you're watching these films. And although some of them are silent, there's always sort of a description as to what's going on. So you don't feel lost ever watching a lot of the films. But I think really it did get sort of the ideas rolling as to what these monsters would look like. Again, we only really knew Frankenstein from literature, as to what he looked like in literature, and then now we have this whole picture of what he looks like. And it's all really done through these films. Like the look of Frankenstein was really really the iconic look that we associate with what Frankenstein would look like. Similar with Dracula, we see that, with Dracula's face, like how it's pale, and that it's and we see the sort of seductive nature behind the creature, that it really brought a lot to the screen when it came to displaying these characters' kinds of personalities, and what their motivations are, and things of that nature. These films really showcase the stories, and put it onto a whole new level, because now people were able to actually see the monsters. They were actually able to feel the emotions that were associated with the monster in a more effective way, because now you get to actually see the actors emote, and you can see the uh, the amount of effort that was put in to showcase these kinds of works. And ultimately, I think they've done justice to the largely to the literary works that they were based off of, as well as certain legends, and things like that. They they have been one. They have been a series of films that I think has still held up fairly well. But I think the more famous ones are basically the seven, and also including The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Those 8 films, The Hunchback, The Phantom of the Opera, Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, The Invisible Man, The Wolfman, The Creature from the Black Lagoon, those are the ones that probably hold up the highest and have probably been considered the more famous ones. And again, it's really all about showcasing imagination and putting it on the screen. And I think that's definitely emphasized within these films. And although, again, yes, they're not as up to date as something like what we would see today when it comes to horror films, and monster movies, but I think they do offer something that's very human, um, and it's just amazing to see something that happened almost we're almost approaching 100 years. You know, just 10 years from now, it's just amazing to see something so old being, moving, and seeing that happen in that place and time. And I think a lot of that comes through with these monster films, because you do see how filmmaking was done early on, and you see the impact that these films had on the studio. And I think they helped the studio really revolutionize itself as to what it could, in regards to what it could do with live action filmmaking. So ultimately, I think that's really all I can say about these films, and as to why I think that they deserve definitely a watch if you're interested in this Halloween season of watching any of the sort of more traditional um, monster films. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say. But again, if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'm more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a pleasant month of Halloween. Bye-bye now.